Hello, thank you for joining us. And congratulations on taking this step towards protecting your financial future. You've built your wealth by thinking about tomorrow and avoiding the mistakes of today. For example, reacting to news or short-term market volatility like the kind we have surrounding the upcoming election. That's smart because short-term decisions can have long-term consequences and they can be costly. Acting impulsively, emotionally, or based upon your biases, both conscious or unconscious, can have a devastating impact on your portfolio and possibly jeopardize your ability to reach your financial goals. And speaking of our biases, is there anything that brings them to the surface more than an election? Especially this one, when the differences between parties seem so extreme. And of course, everyone wants their candidates to win. That's normal. We all want to feel like we're part of a winning team. The danger comes when we extend our biases into the financial markets and let them influence how we invest. And this can happen to anyone. Take, for example, the case of Kurt Eichenwald, an American journalist who spent 2 decades as a senior writer at the New York Times, primarily covering Wall Street. On September 26, 2016, he announced the following. In preparation for a completely unpredictable Trump presidency, I sold all stocks in my kids' education accounts today. I urge you to do the same. 2 months later, on Election Day, November 8, 2016, he doubled down, proclaiming, I hate to say this, but against my investment advisor's recommendation, I sold all stocks and went all cash months ago, just in case. Now, of course, we don't know if Mr. Eichenwald really sold all his investments. After all, it's Twitter. But if he did, and a lot of Americans probably had the same idea, it was a big mistake from a financial standpoint. Here's a chart of the S&P 500 that extends from early November 2016 to Inauguration Day 2021. As you can see, by the time Election Day 2020 rolled around, thanks to compounding, the market was up 58%. What's even more impressive, or unfortunate if you were Mr. Eichenwald, is that the S&P 500 yielded an 81% return from Election Day 2016 to Inauguration Day 2021. Now, if you will indulge me for one moment, I'd like to pause here and ask you a question, the answer to which may provide your most important takeaway from this webinar. But don't worry, there is no right or wrong answer. The question is, how did you feel when I showed you this data? Did it make you feel happy or perhaps angry? Did it provoke an emotional response, something you felt deep down in your core? Did you feel like I was trying to make the case for a particular candidate or that I was showing a political bias? You see, politics is a very passionate topic, and so much so that many of you may remember a time when it was generally considered an off-limits topic at parties or around the dinner table. And that's why it's normal for you to view the data I presented through a political lens. But that's all it is, data. And if you look at it with a political bias, you're liable to miss out on a very important point. My point was not to pick on Mr. Eichenwald. His tweets are public and still live today for everyone to read, nor is it trying to endorse any particular political party. In fact, when it comes to investing in the market, in the example I showed, it doesn't matter what the names of the candidates are or what party they belong to. If there's one thing that I want you to discover today, it's that money isn't red or blue, it's green. History shows us that changing your investment strategy based on which political party is in power is not only a bad idea, but puts you at risk of significantly underperforming the market over the long term. Even though the data backs this up, it's a hard concept for most of us to embrace. During uncertain times, we worry about the future and wonder if there is something we can do, something that can help relieve our discomfort and anxiety. And this year, there have been many things that have prompted that anxiety. On the economic front, we've seen rising interest rates, supply chain issues, and inflation hit 40-year highs. And if that wasn't bad enough, for the first time since 2009, there is a serious chance that the US economy will enter a recession. We've also seen the stock market enter another bear market, the second one since 2020. And this year, some individual stocks fell as much as 70, 80, and in some cases, even 90% from their 2021 highs. In addition, we've seen how macro events like Russia's invasion of Ukraine can reverberate throughout the world, causing increased volatility and roiling financial markets both here and abroad. And let's not forget the COVID-19 pandemic, of which the long-term effects on our economy are still yet to be determined. It's against this backdrop of geopolitical and economic upheaval that we enter into one of the most contentious midterm elections in recent memory. So it's understandable to be anxious about the election and how it could impact your financial future. But we're going to give you some information today that may help put your mind at ease. As I mentioned earlier, we're facing one of the most uncertain political climates in recent memory, at a time when it feels like our country is more divided than it has been in decades. But at Edelman Financial Engines, we believe that politics and investing don't mix. What most investors, and certainly the financial press, get wrong about financial markets is that they latch on to only one story or narrative, getting hyper-focused on one thing like politics when it's just one of 1,000 things that could affect the market. Instead, it's best to stay neutral when it comes to your money. The more you allow your political views to influence your investment strategy, the more likely you'll make a bad financial decision. So as we go into this next section, try to avoid projecting your political views onto what you're going to hear. Remember, we're here today to talk about your wealth, how to protect and build it to provide a secure financial future for you and your family, no matter which political party is in power or which candidates win. A recent study by US Bank analyzed Bloomberg market data from the past 60 years, a period that includes 15 midterm elections like the one we're about to have. The purpose of this study was to try and identify patterns in stock market performance, both in the 12 months preceding an election, as well as the 12 months that followed. Of course, while past performance is no guarantee of future results, studying historical data over long periods of time can offer insights into how elections may affect financial markets and, by extension, your investment portfolio. What they found was that in the 12 months leading up to a midterm election, the S&P 500 averaged an annual return of 0.03%, a significant underperformance compared to the historical average return of 8.1%. Obviously, this year the market has underperformed even worse, but that is likely due to macroeconomic and geopolitical factors, something we will cover in just a little bit. However, when it came to post-midterm stock market performance, it was a completely different story. The study found that in the 12 months after a midterm election, the S&P 500 significantly outperformed the market, posting an average return of 16.3%, more than double its historical average. And here's the big takeaway. The authors of this study found that the outcome of midterm elections has no noticeable impact on the overall stock market performance. Furthermore, they found that the party which controls Congress and whether they change after a midterm election has historically not been an indicator of stock market performance going forward. Now, I know many of you out there may still be skeptical. Perhaps you remember reading or hearing somewhere that the stock market did better historically under this party or that party. Or maybe it's just some of that bias which we spoke about before that's hard to shake. So let's get a second opinion. Here at Edelman Financial Engines, we did our own study, one that looked at stock market performance since 1948, based not just on who's in the White House, but also on which party is controlling the U.S. House of Representatives and the United States Senate. When we look at these three chambers, the White House, the House, and the Senate, we discover that there are 8 possible combinations of who's in control in terms of political party. Of the 8 possible combinations, we're going to throw away 3 of them. 1 never happened at all, and 2 others occurred so rarely that they aren't statistically valid from a survey research perspective. That leaves us with just 5 scenarios that we've experienced since 1949. And here are the results. In 8 of those years, we had a Republican president with a Democrat-controlled House and a Republican-controlled Senate, a combination we'll call RDR. In 22 years, we had a combination of RDD, and in 9 years, we had a combination of DRR. So what were the investment returns during those different configurations? Well, in the RDR combination, the average annual return for the stock market was nearly 18% per year. When it was RDD, the average annual return was 8.5% per year. And when we had a DRR, the average annual return was almost 17% per year. All 3 were pretty good, 2 were exceptionally so. In 29 of those years, we had an environment where one political party controlled all 3 chambers of our government. In 8 of those years, Republicans controlled all 3, and in 21 of those years, Democrats were in control of all 3 chambers. Here are the stock market results. In the 8 years that Republicans controlled the House, the Senate, and the White House, the average annual return for the stock market was 15.9% per year. In the 21 years that Democrats controlled the House, the Senate, and the White House, the average annual return was 15.1% per year. In other words, the returns were almost identical. So the answer is very clear. If you're trying to decide whether or not money is red or blue, you're making a mistake. Money isn't red or blue, money is green. Now, instead of believing that the winners of an election will cause the market to react one way or the other, it's best to keep your money and your politics separate. If your preferred candidate wins, you'll be happy, and your optimism could easily cause you to increase your investment in the stock market. But if your preferred candidate loses, you'll be unhappy, and pessimism could easily cause you to decrease your exposure to the stock market. Either way, you could end up having the wrong allocation to stocks. You could risk too much or not enough, remember Mr. Eichenwald, and the result is that you could jeopardize your ability to achieve your long-term financial goals. When it comes to politics, the conclusion couldn't be more obvious. You shouldn't try and change your investment strategy based on election results or which party is in power. But if the election doesn't impact financial markets, what does? You have to go back over 70 years to 1939 to find the last time the S&P 500 produced negative returns during the 12 months after a midterm election. But this was no regular midterm election. It took place at a time when the U.S. economy was still reeling from the impact of the Great Depression and contending with the oncoming threat of World War II, which is beginning in Europe. This example reinforces another key finding from the U.S. Bank study. The data shows that the health of the economy is a much more important factor for stock market performance than the results of the midterm elections. Although our current economic climate is not as dire as it was in 1939, Still, 2022 has been challenging. The first half of the year opened with mounting anxiety that a series of anticipated interest rate hikes by the Federal Reserve could push the economy into recession. The result? Markets went into a tailspin. Bonds posted their sharpest losses in decades, and the S&P 500 entered a bear market. To make matters worse, inflation delivered a shock to the US economy in the first half of 2022 when it surged to 40-year highs after more than a decade of near hibernation. Add to that the unrest in Ukraine, supply chain problems, and the lingering economic effects of COVID, and it's no wonder there are worries about entering into a recession. What this illustrates is that the economy is not a monolith. It's a combination of many different things, influenced by a variety of factors, including the Federal Reserve, governmental actions, geopolitical events, supply chain issues, and so on. What makes things even more complex is that economic data is always backward-looking. Yet financial markets are forward-looking and react based on expectations of what they think will happen in the future. Generally speaking, the more uncertain markets are about the future, the more volatile they become in the present. And of course, you probably already know all of this. How can you not when the financial headlines are so consistently negative and never seem to stop? The next recession, how bad will it be? The broken states of America, how the financial crisis of the states affects all of us. Wall Street, what went wrong? The angry market, investors are repricing stocks for a more honest picture of the future. The recession, how bad is it and what gives on Wall Street? The death of equities, how inflation is destroying the stock market. As unsettling as these types of headlines can be, it's important to remember that bear markets and recessions are a normal part of overall economic cycles. Since 1929, there have been 27 bear markets in the S&P 500, and on average, they occur roughly every 3.6 years. However, they're generally short-lived, usually lasting 9.6 months on average, though the last complete one we had in 2020 lasted only 33 days. The bottom line is, over a 50-year investment horizon, you can expect to experience roughly 14 bear markets. You can also expect to encounter a recession or two. Since World War II, there have been 12 recessions, and they've lasted on average a little over 11 months each. And as counterintuitive as it may seem, often the best time to buy stocks is during a recession. The thought of a bear market or a recession is scary to most investors, not just because of the accompanying underperformance of the stock market, but because of the volatility that goes hand in hand with that underperformance. However, as scary as things can look in the short term, in the long term, they look less so. Take a look at these two charts. These two charts reveal the same thing, the performance of the S&P 500 index since 1926. The first chart on the left shows you the performance of the S&P on a month-by-month basis. And as you can see, the stock market is pretty volatile, pretty unpredictable. We have no idea what's coming next. Sometimes the market jumps a lot, sometimes it falls a lot in any given month. That chart doesn't inspire a lot of confidence for investing in the stock market, does it? But now look at the chart to the right. It's the same stock market, except we're viewing it over 20-year periods. All of those 20-year periods since 1926. And you can see an incredible difference. At no point in any 20-year period of the past 100 years or so has the stock market ever lost money. The stock market shifts from unpredictable and volatile in the short term to remarkably stable and consistent over the long term. So as you experience the day-to-day headlines about the bleak economic climate, remember that although some of those headlines may technically be accurate in the short term, they're also designed to get your attention by scaring you so that you will click. The economic environment right now is challenging, but here at Edelman Financial Engines, we believe that what we are currently experiencing in the stock market and the economy is a normal, if somewhat painful part of macroeconomic cycles. However, this time it feels particularly painful because of inflation. We haven't seen inflation rates this high since the early 1980s, a time before most of us were thinking about investing and growing our wealth, let alone planning for retirement. Given the resurgence of inflation and the speed at which it has become a part of our everyday lives, you might be tempted to ask yourself, what if it is different this time? Of course, nobody can predict what will happen in the future, but if history is any guide, it won't be. Remember those doom and gloom headlines we looked at earlier? Let's put a little more context around them. The next recession, how bad will it be? That was a headline from The Economist on October 11th, 2018. The broken states of America, how the financial crisis of the states affects all of us. This was a headline that graced the cover of Time on June 28th, 2010. Wall Street, what went wrong? Was from The Economist on November 25th, 2006. Business Week put, the angry market, investors are repricing stocks for a more honest picture of the future on its cover on July 29th, 2002. The recession, how bad is it and what gives on Wall Street, was a pessimistic headline Time ran with on January 13th, 1992. And finally, the greatest of all time of negative stock market predictions. The death of equities, how inflation is destroying the stock market, was plastered across the front of Business Week on August 13th, 1979. That week, the S&P 500 index closed at 108.3. And by December 31st of last year, it had risen to just over 4766. A return of more than 4,300%. And that wasn't the first time someone predicted the death of the stock market, and it probably won't be the last. Today, social media amplifies these types of negative predictions, and unfortunately, more than ever, investors are listening to the noise and using it to make financial decisions. Recent studies have shown that most investors use social media at least once a day to get financial information, and in the past 12 months, the use of Twitter, Reddit, and TikTok as a daily tool among investors has increased by 44%, 48%, and 54% respectively. So again, though nobody can predict the future, it's likely not different this time, just louder. And that's why you need to stay focused on the long term and use an investment strategy that's designed to adapt to different kinds of markets. We've now seen that it's the economy, not elections, that influence financial markets, and we know that the economy is subject to up and down cycles, which can include bear markets and recessions. So what's the right investment strategy to help you reach your financial goals no matter what economic conditions we face in the future? A simple yet powerful investment strategy that we've provided our clients since 1986, 9 midterm elections ago. There are 3 steps. Step 1, stay invested. Step 2, stay diversified. And step 3, strategically rebalance your portfolio. As we look at each of these steps one by one, ask yourself if this is how your portfolio is currently being managed. Stay invested. As we saw in the last segment, if you focus on short-term volatility, it doesn't inspire much confidence in investing in the stock market, and it's easy to get distracted from your goals by scary and negative daily news, headlines, and social media. But how relevant are month-to-month returns? When you made your decision to invest, was it your intention to reevaluate the market and your investments every 30 days? That's what's called market timing, and it's next to impossible to do. Just ask Mr. Eichenwald. Not only do you have to predict when to get out of the market, but you also must determine when it's time to get back in. Trying to time the market is not only exhausting, but ironically, you increase your chances of underperforming. That's because some of the biggest one-day rallies have occurred when expectations suddenly have changed during bear markets. This chart shows what your average annual returns would have been had you been invested in the S&P 500 all 3,775 days the stock market was open between 2007 and 2021. But if you had missed just 18 of the best performing days during that time, your average return would have gone from 8.4% to 0. That's why you need to maintain a long-term focus and why you should plan on holding your investments for 10 years or more and stay fully invested at all times. Stay diversified. So if you're going to stay invested for the long term, what should you invest in? It's the question everyone is asking. Where should I put my money today? And there are plenty of choices, including stocks, bonds, real estate, even cash. Here at Edelman Financial Engines, our investment team analyzes 16 major asset classes and market sectors and money flows in and out of those sectors and asset classes based on regular economic cycles. You have a choice as to which of them you invest in and how much to own and when to own them. So how do you determine where to allocate your money? Take a look at this chart. We analyzed the 16 major asset classes and market sectors over the past 10 years and ranked them by performance in each year. The best is at the top and the worst performers at the bottom. And as you can see, the performances range from number 1 to number 16. This begs the question, if you invest for the next 10 years, which investment should you pick? Should you put your money into the number 1 top-ranked investment, or should you put your money into something different? Well, here's how they performed over the last 10 years. It's amazing, isn't it? And the takeaway from this chart, it's impossible to predict how investments are going to perform merely based on how they performed in the past. I mentioned it a moment ago, past performance does not guarantee future results. That's because over time, investment returns are mostly random. You already know this, but the statement often shocks the average investor. And this chart fools many less sophisticated investors because volatility makes investment returns appear random over short time periods. We also see this same short-term dynamic in other areas, like the performance of sports teams or in weather patterns. So why do so many investors believe that last year's winners will be next year's winners? Often it's due to something called the hot hand theory, a type of recency bias. This is where we think a sports team, fund manager, or stock that's had a lot of recent success is hot and will continue its winning ways. Unfortunately, this is an emotional response that really doesn't make sense logically. And as this chart proves, despite what we'd like to believe, it doesn't work out that way. This is why it's so important to be diversified. Since we don't know what asset class or market sector is going to do well next, we need to own the entire market all the time. Let me illustrate for you what happens if you don't do that. If you invested in all 16 of those major asset classes and market sectors between 2007 and 2021, and you did so equally, you would have earned 7.8% per year, which is a decent return. But if you skipped the top 3 asset classes, the 3 that made the most money in each year, you would not have had a return of 7.8%. Instead, your return would have been just 3.9%. It's hard to believe, but the majority of the total profits on an annual basis came from just the top 3 asset classes. This is why it is so important for you to diversify and remain diversified. Now you may be asking the question, okay, if I'm going to own all 16 of these asset classes, do I do so equally? Well, that's not how we do it at Edelman Financial Engines, and that's probably not the way you should do it either, for the simple reason that there are variances in your situation. For example, you might need to have more of your money in one asset class and less in another. Take a look at this example. This is a pie chart showing you a typical asset allocation model. It shows that you have lots of stocks, but they're broken out between large cap, mid cap, and small cap stocks. You have growth stocks and value stocks, US and foreign stocks, emerging market stocks, exponential technologies, and real estate. But you also have the world of bonds, government bonds, corporate bonds, mortgage bonds, and foreign bonds. You even have cash in the portfolio because, yes, cash is an asset class. In other words, you have a broad array of diversification within your portfolio, and it even goes beyond just that. For example, once you decide that you're going to have some of your money in stocks, the next question becomes which stocks? There are about 7,000 stocks publicly traded on a global basis. So instead of trying to pick one or two or three stocks for your portfolio, you should own thousands of stocks in your portfolio to capture the broad results that are available. Now, this portfolio model, this asset allocation, might not be what's right for you, depending on how much money you're investing on a regular basis, how much money you already have invested, depending on how long before you start to withdraw the money, whether or not you're already making withdrawals, and of course, your attitude about risk. All of these factors could require you to have a different asset allocation model than the one you see here. For example, maybe this pie chart is more appropriate for you, or maybe this one, or this one. In other words, what your asset allocation looks like should be dependent on your specific circumstances, your goals, and your attitude about risk. Now that we've seen the importance of owning a highly diversified portfolio and maintaining that portfolio for a very long time, years, even decades, there's one final step for our three-step strategy: strategic rebalancing. As we've seen, asset classes and market sectors perform independently and differently than each other. Over time, some will rise and some will fall. That means that your portfolio's allocation into individual asset classes and market sectors can get out of alignment, some becoming overweighted while others remain underweight. And those overweighted parts of your portfolio may expose you to outsized risk. Rebalancing takes advantage of the normal up and down economic cycles we've talked about by trimming outperforming investments to bring them back in line with your original allocation model, then reinvesting those proceeds into underweighted assets. Now, anybody can rebalance a portfolio. There are even robo-advisors and online software that can do it for you. But it's how you rebalance, the specific methodology you use, that matters. For example, rebalancing monthly, quarterly, or based on any other arbitrary time frame presents a major problem. In between rebalancing days, your portfolio may become overweighted in some assets, potentially exposing you to increased risk. Conversely, other assets may become underweighted, possibly preventing you from taking advantage of market cycles. At Edelman Financial Engines, we rebalance by the percentage, not by the calendar. We review all of our clients' portfolios, and when a portfolio drifts outside of its allocation thresholds, we rebalance it to bring it back into alignment with its original allocation model. This disciplined approach eliminates subjectivity and emotions in the decision-making process and is designed to help reduce volatility and investment risk in your portfolio while maintaining or improving your return. So what's so special about the Edelman Financial Engine's investment philosophy? Well, it has to do with part of our name. It's the engines. Our investment philosophy has been developed by a large team of experts in investment management, financial economics, mathematics, and statistics. In financial terms, our engines refer to a sophisticated Monte Carlo simulation engine that evaluates a wide range of possible investment outcomes that could occur for any given investment strategy. These engines are part of a proprietary technology platform based upon Nobel Prize-winning research and backed by 12 patents in financial technology. Every month, this technology is used to model more than 38,000 securities based upon proprietary analysis. Each investment is analyzed to determine its exposure to 16 asset classes, then adjusted for its specific risks, expenses, manager performance, and tax efficiency. These simulation engines help us choose portfolios for our clients based on their risk tolerance, investable funds, time horizons, and a variety of other factors, in order to help improve their likelihood of achieving their financial goals. Our investment philosophy is not based on trying to beat the market through tactical market timing or reacting to short-term news. Instead, our investment models are designed to adapt to current market conditions, including current inflation levels, interest rates, dividend growth rates, asset class returns, volatility, market correlations, and allocation across a global market portfolio. But it's not just the engines that set us apart from other firms, it's the personal touch. It's how we leverage the power of technology to create an integrated wealth plan that's customized based on your risk profile and financial goals. As we've seen today, money isn't red or blue, money is green, which means you need to invest based on your long-term financial goals, not based on what's happening in a current or upcoming election. The more you allow your political views to color your investment strategy, the more likely you'll make a bad financial decision. Don't let your political views interfere with sound investment management. Yes, be very focused on the election for the issues that are affecting our country, but not in terms of deciding whether to get in or out of the stock market. More importantly, remember that an investment portfolio is just one part of an integrated wealth plan. At Edelman Financial Engines, we take a modern approach to wealth creation, one that identifies opportunities and anticipates future economic and market conditions, both good and bad. We build financial plans that connect and coordinate strategies beyond investment management and includes financial planning, tax strategy, estate and insurance planning, and retirement planning. Every one of our planners is a fiduciary, legally and ethically required to act in their client's best interest, and wants to do so. Barron's has named Edelman Financial Engines the top independent financial advisory firm in the nation for the last 4 years in a row. I hope you found today's discussion helpful and that it has given you some peace of mind during these uncertain times. And to help you maintain that peace of mind no matter what the future brings, someone from our team will be following up with you about having a free wealth planning review. This review includes one-on-one discussions with a fiduciary planner, after which we can develop a financial plan to help you move your wealth forward and achieve your financial goals. In the meantime, if you're looking for answers to questions about what it takes to take your wealth to the next level, start the conversation with a planner at Edelman Financial Engines by calling 855-601-9315. Thanks again for taking the time to join us today. We look forward to partnering with you in the future.